Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take that stack of city council reports, all those policy outlines, and the public comments you sent us, and really just distill them down to what you need to know.
And today we are looking at Gilroy, California.
Right, the community with the Spice for Life slogan.
And, if the sources from their January 5th, 2026 city council meeting or any guide, that spice level is, well, it's set to scorching hot right now.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, you're looking at a city that's going through some huge administrative changes while at the exact same time facing this really dramatic public fight over a new development.
So the mission for you, the learner, is to get a quick handle on how this local government works from the inside. How do they hire their top people? How do they get money for public health?
And then there's the external pressure, the intense citizen backlash when people feel like their fundamental resources are on the line.
It's this fascinating contrast, isn't it? You have this super detailed, almost bureaucratic planning on one side.
And then just, existential panic on the other. It really shows the full range of what local government deals with.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start in the very top with the administrative architecture. There's a big shift in leadership happening.
That's exactly where the meeting began. They made the appointment of the new city administrator, Matt Morley, official.
And this is the top job in the city.
It is. He's set to start on February 9th, 2026. And look, this isn't just a routine hire. This is a very clear strategic move to bring in some serious veteran talent.
The sources show he has, 29 years of local government experience?
Mm-hmm.
Including big roles in places like Saratoga, Los Gatos, San Jose.
Exactly. So he knows how to navigate the whole complex political and financial world of these communities right next to Silicon Valley.
And the money reflects that. The council is making a huge financial commitment here.
Oh, absolutely. Morley's base salary is set at $339,000 a year. And when you look at what other city managers in that region are making, that number tells you they were determined to get a proven leader.
Someone who can deliver.
Right. Someone who can deliver on economic goals, fiscal stability. A salary like that sets a very, very high bar for what they expect from him.
And they obviously couldn't afford any gap in leadership, so they put an interim plan in place right away.
Mm-hmm. They appointed the finance director, Harjot Sangha, as the acting city administrator until Morley can take over in February. It just shows you how critical that continuous, stable leadership is.
It's a small detail, but in the middle of all this high-level executive change, they also took a moment to introduce Omar Paniagua,
the new facilities maintenance specialist.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that local government isn't just about the C-suite. It runs on the work of people in these essential roles who are literally keeping the lights on.
So true. And moving from people to process, we hit consent calendar item 6.2. It's the adoption of the city seal and logo use policy.
Now, this sounds kind of tedious.
It does, but it's actually a really crucial piece of brand management and legal protection.
So what are they doing exactly?
They're setting standards for everything. The official city seal, the main city logo from 2008, and even the special logos for the police, fire, and arts departments.
And the goal is just to control how it's used.
Pretty much. To make sure that if some outside group uses a Gilroy logo, they aren't implying an official endorsement. That's huge for legal liability and just protecting the city's professional image.
What I thought was really interesting, though, was the balance they struck. For efficiency, they gave the new city administrator the power to approve external use of the logo.
Right, which cuts down on a ton of red tape.
But there's a safety valve.
There is. Any council member can call up that decision for a full council review if they think something's off or it's a controversial use. It's a classic government move.
Empower the executive for speed, but keep a political check in your back pocket.
Exactly. And that focus on internal policy leads us right into the next section, which is all about getting proactive on public health and enforcement.
Using outside money to get things done locally.
And this is a big win for them. They accepted a 3-year grant for $291,546.
Wow.
Yeah, it's from the California Department of Justice, funded by Prop 56, and it's all for tobacco enforcement and prevention.
And the data they presented really backs up the need for this. Gilroy has 52 tobacco retailers, and something like 21.6%, over a fifth of them, are within 1,000 feet of a school.
And there's a demographic piece to this, too. The city is 57% Hispanic Latino, a group that has historically been targeted very heavily by marketing for flavored tobacco.
So this grant isn't just general enforcement, it's really targeted.
It is. It's specifically aimed at cutting down youth access and making sure retailers are following the law.
And when you look at how they're planning to spend the money, the plan gets incredibly specific.
It really does. The grant outlines what they have to do every single year. 17 retailer inspections.
6 minor decoy operations.
6 shoulder tap operations to catch adults buying for kids. And 3 undercover buys to stop illegal sales like single cigarettes or loosies.
Okay, but let's pause on that. Does the city council really need to be deciding on exactly 17 inspections and 6 decoy operations? It seems a bit like micromanagement.
That's a really fair question. But with these kinds of grant-funded programs, the state wants to see a clear line between the money and the activity. They want metrics.
So the council's role here is just to accept the terms of the grant.
Pretty much. It's less about them dictating police strategy and more about them checking the boxes required to get almost $300,000 in outside funding.
That makes sense. And they weren't wasting any time because they also pushed through an urgency interim ordinance.
Right. Following up on a previous meeting, this puts a temporary ban for up to 45 days on issuing any new tobacco retailer permits in the entire city.
So it just hits the pause button.
It does. And the reason they cited for the urgency was the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare, particularly regarding the protection of minors. It shows they see this as a real crisis that needs immediate action.
This focus on improving quality of life, it seems to bring us right to Section 3, where they start to look at redesigning community services.
Exactly. This is where they're trying to solve a big budget and equity problem in their recreation department.
They put out a major request for proposals, an RFP for the Recreation Division, and this was driven by a couple of key concerns.
The first one was money. The department gets a $1.5 million contribution from the general fund every year.
And the second was about access. Complaints that the cost for kids to participate in programs was just too high, it was exclusionary.
So they went looking for an outside consultant, and the scope of work for this thing is incredibly thorough. This isn't just a quick look-see, it's a planned overhaul covering 15 different areas.
And to really get what they're trying to do, you have to look at the terms they use. Like the RFP requires a CAPRA gap summary.
Right, and CAPRA is the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies. So what they're saying is they want to measure themselves against national gold standards to see where they're falling short.
Okay, and what about the money side, the cost recovery?
They specifically called for a cost recovery and resource allocation policy, and they mentioned something called the pyramid method.
The pyramid method, what is that exactly?
It's a way to be more transparent and equitable. Basically, you categorize services based on who benefits. At the bottom of the pyramid are essential things like public parks that should be 100% taxpayer funded.
Okay.
Then as you move up the pyramid to more specialized things like a specific sports league or a class, the amount of the costs you expect to get back from user fees goes up.
So it's a way to justify that $1.5 million from the general fund, to figure out what really has to be subsidized for the public good and what should pay for itself.
That's the idea. And beyond the money, the RFP also requires a deep dive into facility needs, accessibility, and a whole equity action plan to address barriers for underserved communities.
And on a totally different note, they also address cultural priorities with the For the Love of Gilroy public art campaign. This got a little contentious.
It's just a little. The Arts and Culture Commission recommended 14 designs, and the council was moving to award $500 for the rights to each one. But then Councilmember Hilton spoke up.
He tried to change the ranking, right?
Yeah.
To give priority to the work of minors.
Yeah, he even mentioned one young artist by name, Kayla Bostock. It was an appeal to support young talent over sticking to the established procedure.
And how did that go over?
The council denied the change and passed the original list 7-0.
So they stuck to the process.
They did. The consensus was that protecting the integrity of the commission's formal ranking process was more important than stepping in even for a good reason. Process over preference.
Which brings us to the final and I think most dramatic part of this deep dive, the public comments on the proposed AWS data center.
This is where the whole tone of the meeting just flips.
All that detailed internal work was completely overshadowed by public fear.
And it's a jarring shift because people didn't just come with general complaints. They showed up with specific, alarming, and cited statistics that basically questioned if this project was even sustainable.
And the number one fear was about water.
Water scarcity. A speaker named Britt Smith pointed out that data centers this size can use up to 5 million gallons of water a day.
5 million gallons.
She put it in context. That's the same amount of water a town of 50,000 people would use.
Wow, that's a huge pressure point, especially in California.
It is, and the concerns weren't just about the quantity. Another speaker, Cindy Smith, brought up the infamous Hinckley contamination case with PG&E to talk about the dangers of nitrate contamination.
And Gilroy has had issues with that before, right?
Yes, on a smaller scale. They've had to issue warnings for infants and pregnant women. So bringing up Hinckley, that really highlights the fear of corporate risk becoming permanent health damage for the community.
It also seems like the regional authorities are worried, too.
They are. Speakers pointed out that Valley Water, the regional utility, had already expressed concern in their review of the project's environmental impact report.
What were they worried about?
They said the project's groundwater use could negatively impact the entire Yaga subbasin.
And to be clear, the Yaga subbasin is a primary source of groundwater for the whole area.
It's a critical source. So if this data center puts a strain on that, you're not just talking about an inconvenience, you are talking about a threat to the long-term water security for the whole region.
And the fears didn't stop at water. People were worried about the power grid.
Huge concern. Residents were saying the grid already struggles, that they have constant outages in the summer when it hits 105 degrees. How could it possibly handle the massive power demands of an AI system?
Then there was the safety issue, and this was incredibly specific. The facility is going to have lithium-ion batteries on site.
For backup power. And a speaker brought up the 2025 fire at the Moss Landing power plant, pointing out that those battery fires can take days, sometimes weeks, to fully extinguish.
A fire like that in a residential area would be a massive public safety risk.
Absolutely. And then you have the long-term health effects. Someone cited a 2024 UCR Caltech study that linked fumes from data center fires to 600,000 asthma cases.
And $20 billion in public health costs.
Yeah.
This whole debate shifts from just economic development to environmental justice.
And then, adding kerosene to the fire was the whole issue of process.
The transparency.
Exactly. Speaker after speaker complained that this massive project was approved administratively by the Community Development Director, Sharon Goey.
Without a vote from the Planning Commission or the City Council. And without the public even knowing about it.
That's the real source of the anger. People felt completely shut out of a decision with enormous consequences for their city.
And just to cap it all off, an illustrator named Trinity Fawcett connected the data center to the bigger culture war over AI.
Arguing that this AWS facility is just helping AI grow, which in turn is threatening the jobs of artists and illustrators right there in Gilroy.
So if we just step back and look at the whole picture, this January 5th meeting shows a city that's operating on two completely different scales.
It really is. On one hand, you have Gilroy dedicating so much energy to administrative detail, spending over $300,000 on a new executive, securing almost $300,000 to enforce tobacco laws.
Launching a huge 15-point review to make their recreation programs better. These are all these focused, small-bore efforts to improve quality of life.
But at the same time, in the very same room, the city leadership is facing this storm of highly specific, very credible public concern that this one single staff-approved project,
This data center.
threatens their most basic resources, the water, the power, the air quality, for the very same people they're trying to protect with all those other policies.
It perfectly captures that tension. The necessary grinding work of bureaucracy versus the overwhelming consequences of unchecked industrial growth.
They're successfully managing the minutia while an existential threat is knocking at the door.
So here's the final thought. The city accepted nearly $300,000 to enforce tobacco laws, specifically to protect minors from public health risks. Yet in that same meeting, they heard cited testimony that the approval of one industrial facility could threaten the future water and air quality for those exact same kids.
So when a government is simultaneously protecting kids from cigarettes and potentially risking their future water supply, where does accountability really lie? That's the question for you, the learner.